like why I love N8N and the power of the modularity and the scalability, the reusability. But how do you actually do it? So what we're going to do here is we're going to add an AI agent. And so by default, we're going to be talking to this thing in N8N with the chat trigger. Obviously, we need to connect our brain. So we're going to grab a OpenAI chat model. We have our credential set up. We're going to be talking with 4o Mini here. And this is it. So we can say hello, and we should get a response back, right? So how do we get it to send data to a different tool? So let's just say what we want to do is have it call this specific tool to send an email. And obviously, we can do a Gmail tool, so we could just connect that straight away to send an email, but this is just to show how it works. So we click on tool, and you would click on call N8N workflow tool. So this uses another N8N workflow as a tool, blah, blah, blah. So when you come in here, you have to configure it. This is a name, so I'm just going to say send email. I'm going to copy this up here as well. And then the description, we're just going to say call this tool to send an email. So we're giving the agent a description of what this tool does and its name. And then what we need to do here is we have the location of the actual tool. So the best way to do it is just to choose from database. You can choose from a list or by ID. So if you do ID, what you'll do is you'll grab this section of the URL. So this is the workflow's ID. If I click into the second one, you can see this is the one we're going to be setting up as a tool. It has a different ID. So for now, I can copy this, I can paste it into there. And now this is a sub workflow because we're referencing it by ID. The easier way really is to just choose it from a list, and then we can see all of the other stuff that we want. But you can see it already auto-populated with the one that we were talking about because we gave it the right ID. And you can make sure it's the right one by clicking on open resource link. It'll open up the workflow that you're referencing that we want to send data to. And that's how you make sure, right? So this is the workflow we're going to be sending data to, and this is the parent workflow. So we have this configured, right? And a couple things to pay attention to real quick. This tool will call the workflow you define below, and it will look in the last node for the response. The workflow needs to start with an execute workflow trigger. Okay? So we'll keep it there for now. Let's just say I'm going to say send an email to Bob. Let's just try that. We'll see what happens. It tried to call the tool and it failed. It seems that the email sending didn't go through due to an error. I'll need some more information to send the email, such as the subject and the body. So this tool errored. It tried to call the tool, as you can see, and it said missing node to start execution. So that's a failure. All we have to do is come into the sub workflow, and we know that this workflow has to start with an execute by being called by another workflow. So here we have this. We have an input data mode. So right now, I'm just going to switch it to accept all data so it actually gets data. And now we have this trigger. We'll hit save. We'll come back into here and we'll try that message again. We should see now it actually sends data through, and it says the email has been sent to Bob. If you need anything else, let me know. Obviously, the email has not been sent, but what we can do is we can see here, this is the query that we sent over to that tool. So if I actually click into this right here, we're in the send email tool, and I click on view sub execution, it'll take us to that workflow, and it will take us to the execution that just happened. So this is the only execution, and obviously we have nothing connected, so all we're going to see is that we got this data. So we got the to, the subject, the actual message, okay? And we can also view the parent execution. So I'm just going to close out of that tab. And what we're going to do now is we are going to look in here and actually be able to send a response. So I'm just going to use an edit fields. Oops. I'm going to use an edit fields node, and I'm just going to set this to response, and I'm just going to say the email has been sent. So what this is going to do is when we connect this, it's basically just going to respond to the parent workflow with this output. So if we test this step right here, we'll see that the response is this is the output. And so when we do this again, instead of seeing query, we're going to see an output, and it's going to be that message that we just manually typed. So I'm just going to do this again. It's going to hit that tool. The email has been successfully sent. We click into here and we now see response. The email has been sent, which, as you remember, is the exact same thing that ended this workflow. So right now this is fixed, but what we would do is probably have this be a variable so that we actually get the real-time response every single execution. So cool. That's one thing, right? So we're sending over data. On the left-hand side, this is what we sent to the tool. This is what the tool sent back. But now what we can do is we can configure more specific information to be sent over. So we come into here, the sub workflow, and if we click onto this node, right now you remember we have this set to accept all data. If we change this to you can use JSON, but it's much easier to use a UI where we can define the fields below. So we can define, okay, what we want is a to. We want a subject. We want the actual email. And then maybe we also just want like the actual chat ID of the chat that's happening within N8N. So those are the 4 things that we want to get. Because currently, what we're getting, let me just save this workflow real quick. Currently, what we're getting is just one field called query that has everything. And that's not super organized. So we want to split that up into 4 items. So we saved this, and now we come back into here, and we should open this up, and we'll see now we have these 4 workflow inputs to configure. So what I'm going to do, first of all, is the chat ID is just the chat ID we want to get from our chat trigger. So we'll drag that in dynamically, and that's how you can reference variables and send across variables to workflows. But for these ones, we want the AI to configure that. So if I just hit these buttons, which lets the model define this parameter, as you noticed, if we go over here, the model already created who it's to, the subject, and the actual email. So it should be able to configure that correctly and just put it into the parameters. So if we just hit this exact same thing again, we'll see that it's going to, okay, it didn't call the tool. Please provide me with the subject and the content of the email you'd like to send to Bob. So it didn't actually fill that up yet. So what we're going to do is just add a little system prompt in here. So we're going to say, your helpful assistant, send a request, no, wait, your helpful email assistant. I'm going to give it tool, which is called send email. And we're going to say, use this tool, send an email. You will provide the to, subject, and email. I think I just called it email. So we'll save that. We'll make sure that that's right. So to, subject, email. And we'll just try this again. Actually, maybe let's give a more detailed prompt. Send an email to Bob asking how he is doing. So we'll try that off. It hits the tool. The email has been sent to Bob asking how he's doing. If we come into here, we can now see how it actually populated those fields. So we got the to was Bob at example, the subject, and the actual email. And now what we're going to do is click on the sub execution, and we can see the way the data actually came through to this tool. So right here, we get, instead of one field called query, we now have these 4 things coming through. Oops. We have these 4 things coming through, which are the to, the subject, the email body, and the chat ID. And this one was dynamically referenced as a variable. These ones were filled in by the model. But that's how you can now send over data to other workflows. This is how you can respond back to your main workflow. And then whatever you want to configure in between these 2 things is, up to you. That's where you can set up like actual different tool calls and, all the nodes in between. So hope that one cleared up any questions if you may have been having about workflow inputs, sending data across, how you get your agent to respond back to the main agent, all that kind of stuff, even if it's not an agent. So in this case, we weren't even calling an agent. We were calling just a workflow. But that's the cool part, is that you can call agents and have those talk to each other. So yeah, that's going to be it for this one.